Hi everybody, I am broadcasting from my kitchen because I want to share with you some ideas that you can use when you're at home to work on speech and language skills using just about anything that you already have at home. And today, what I want to share with you is how I use books in therapy to work on just about any skill that we need to address. So for today's video, I have this book, which is just something that I already had at home. You don't need any special book. Anything that you have with words, without words, ebooks, you can use any of the strategies that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. So whenever I begin reading, I always start by talking about the front cover. We point out the front cover, the back cover, the title, the author, and the illustrator, and we talk about what these things are. And then I help the children point to these elements as well. It's just a great way to encourage knowledge of literacy concepts. The next thing that we do is talk about what we see on the front cover. So I will often give them an example of what I expect them to do by starting and saying, I see a mouse. What do you see? And then they might respond and say, I see a pencil. Another thing you could do is engage them by making a connection, such as, I see a cookie. Do you like cookies? And maybe they'll respond to that. If they don't respond, just keep modeling and move on. We also will talk about characters on the front and their facial expressions. So we will talk about how they're feeling. For example, he's feeling happy. Why do you think he's happy? What makes you happy? It's a great way to encourage some of those social emotional skills as well, and an easy thing to be doing while you look through the book and see how the characters' emotions change depending on different situations as well. The last thing we do before reading is make a prediction. So I'll say something like, what do you think will happen in this story? And again, your child might not know or know how to respond. That's okay because it's a difficult skill. We just want to expose them to as much as we can so you can give an answer of what an appropriate response might be. So something like, I think the mouse will eat lunch. It doesn't need to be correct, just providing that exposure. So as you begin reading, you can follow along the text with your finger, which helps establish the relationship of sounds making up letters, and letters making up words, words making up sentences, and the idea that text is read from left to right. Also, while you read, you can use different voices for different characters, make the sounds that animals make sounds for actions like boom or crash. Anything that helps the book come alive and becomes more interactive is going to help you have a more fun reading experience. The most important piece when you're reading a book is not just the text, but the pictures. So always spend time talking about the pictures before or after you read this. Sometimes I don't even read the text. We just flip through books and talk about what we see in the pictures because this is really where all of those language skills can be addressed. So just about any book, you can find vocabulary terms that you can target. So in this book, I see a plate, cups, fork, knife, spoon, sink, and refrigerator. So off the bat, we can talk about what those things are. So again, instead of saying, what's this, what's this, what's this, I'm going to model what I want them to do by saying, I see a plate. What do you see? And they might say, I see a fork. Or they might say, I don't know. And then you would just model again, oh, well, I see a fork. Then you could expand on that and say, what do we do with the plate? Talk about what you do with each thing after you name it. Then you could even take it a step further and say, okay, so we have plates and forks and a fridge and a sink. Where are they? And maybe if your child is struggling, you could give choices. Are we in the bathroom or are we in the kitchen? And again, if they're incorrect, you could just say they're in the kitchen. Don't penalize them for being incorrect. Just model the correct response and move on. If you wanted to take it even a step further, you could talk about what else do we have in the kitchen? Since you're at home, probably take a walk to your own kitchen. What do you have in your kitchen? We have snacks. Look, I'm in my kitchen. There's a photo on the wall. So talk about things in your house. Connect it to what is going on in real life. As you read, you can also talk about actions. So here you could talk about the boy is combing the mouse. What else do we do with a comb? We comb our hair, things like that. Look for opportunities to talk about prepositions. This mouse is in the box. This mouse is on top of the box. Talk about those. There's tons and tons of actions that you can address usually through pictures. So each page there might be actions you can talk about, or ways to describe the pictures by talking about colors. You can talk about size. The mouse is small and the boy is big. Those kinds of things. You can also work on making predictions. So in this story, you could say, what do you think will happen next? And then don't turn the page until your child gives you a response. If their response is, I don't know, model and say, I think they missed the bus and they'll be late to school. Just help them come up with that correct response and then move on. You could also encourage them to make a prediction by seeing if they can fill in the blank. So by doing that, you might read a section of the book, pause before you read the last word and see if they can fill it in. That's especially useful if you're reading a repetitive book like Brown Bear, What Do You See? When you read that same line over and over, your child might be able to fill it in after a while. So they could predict, if you could say, I see a red bird looking at, and then wait and see if they can fill it in. If they don't fill it in, say the word, move on. Other goals that you might be addressing are articulation. So for example, if your child is working on the S sound, look for words in the book beginning with S. So right here, it says, when you get to school, he'll put his things in your locker. Can't see that. So what I would do is read this and say, stop when I get to the word school, go like this. When you get to school, really emphasize that word by saying it louder and a little bit longer. And then pause and say, did you hear that word? School. It starts with S. You try that word, school. And then they might respond or they might not respond. Again, it's okay if they don't. You just want to give them that exposure, move on. Try not to force them to say it or get into a power struggle over it, because we want to keep this fun. And, everyone is feeling a little bit anxious, especially being cooped up at home, and we don't want to add any pressure to what our kids are feeling as well. Other things you can do are making connections between what's happening in the book and what's happening in your life. So again, we talked about that in the kitchen, taking a walk in the kitchen. You could just say, they're reading a book just like we are. Any connections. They're in school. You go to school too. Anything that relates to things that you do, things that you have, people that, if there's a character that looks like someone you know, you could talk about that. When you get to the end of the book, read it again, because repetition is the best way to encourage language development, and it really helps with reading comprehension. You can also have your child go back through the book and try reading it to you. So without reading the words, just flip through the pages and talk about what is on each page. Again, it doesn't have to actually be what happened in the story, but the idea is they're beginning to learn how to sequence the events and talk about, using sentences, what's going on each page. So maybe they're even using some of those descriptor words, or they're using some of those preposition words like on or under. And you can continue to model that too if they get stuck. You say one thing about the page, like this one. They're building blocks. Then he ate a sandwich. That's it. Just keep moving through it. Okay, so there are other goals that you can work on that I didn't address in this video, but I did come up with a little handout based on everything that I said, plus a little extra. So hopefully you can find what you need on that handout. If you are struggling with anything or need help working in a particular skill that your child's working on, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know how it goes. Have fun, keep it light, enjoy yourselves, and happy reading.